And I was not ready to go when I hit the record button on this one, but I guess I better get there. I didn't have my water. Raced to go get that. Light wasn't on. Had something stuck in my teeth. Show must happen, however. Greetings. Greetings, everyone. It's Monday, June 17th. Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball rolls along. And today, we take a brief vacation from the ADP versus reality tour that we began with a couple of episodes late last week because the NBA draft is in 9 days. You guys know that I don't pay much attention to it. I don't think that, for fantasy purposes, I don't think that there's a whole lot outside of Dynasty. So Dynasty, obviously, there's something because you can make trades right now. Redraft, I don't think you need to be super keyed in on everything happening on draft day. But with the caveat that I think it is actually very useful to understand who the guys are that can actually make fantasy impacts on day one. How do we get to that? Well, that's how we get to today's show topic, which is a little bit of a recycled show idea from one we did only 2 months ago on the previous podcast feed. But it's extraordinarily important that we have this type of episode on the new feed here over on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, because all of you guys need to know how I currently feel about drafting rookies. It's not the same as how I felt about drafting rookies even as recently as 2 years ago. Also, to those that are watching, yes, this hat is the Shaggin' Wagon from Dumb and Dumber. It's something that I've been wanting to buy for myself for a long time, and then I finally went ahead and did it. For those that are listening, I hope you guys remember the Shaggin' Wagon. Mutts Cuts. Anyway, got that logo on a hat now, so whatever. Present from me to me. I'm Dan Besbris, by the way. At Dan Besbris, DanBesbris on Twitter. At Old Man Squad on Twitter if you want to follow my new network's feed. And yes, it is very much still new. Started in May. It's June. We're a month young. A wee infant. Just a little blob. So anyway, why did I bring up all this stuff? Where does it all get to? And you're like, Dan, you son of a gun. The name of the show is talking about Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren and Brandon Miller. Why aren't you talking about those guys right out of the chute? Why are you talking about your stance on rookies? Well, everything colors this same discussion. Let's go back all the way to the beginning. In the beginning, and I needed, may he rest in peace, Don LaFontaine to give me one of those. In the beginning. I can't do it. I had food recently. I got a lot of salt. Can't do the deep voice right now. In the beginning. Can't do it. I can do it when the vocal cords are all limbered up, but they're not there yet. In the beginning, I came on these podcasts, the old feed, mind you, and I said, don't even worry about rookies. Don't even worry about it. Why did I say that? Not because it was the most accurate thing to say. It isn't. Because there's usually one, sometimes two. In a magical universe, you might even get three that outperform ADP. But for the most part, rookies drafted early or middle tend to stink it up. And the ones that do end up performing are oftentimes the ones you didn't really see coming to begin with. The reason that I came on the podcast for all those years, 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, probably were all the shows where I was saying, just don't even worry about it, is because my approach to fantasy basketball, and more so my approach to fantasy basketball podcasting and analysis, is to try to make your lives as simple as possible. How to get the best return for your fantasy team with the least amount of work. Because ultimately, isn't that all what we want? Isn't that what that's the end goal? How can I win my league doing as little as humanly possible? That's not to say that we don't want to be playing fantasy basketball, but I am in whatever it is, 9, 10 leagues now, shaved down from like 15 or 16 a couple years ago. I feel like this is a little bit of a sweet spot for me. Discussion for another day. Point is, I don't want to have to spend hundreds of hours on each one of those leagues. I don't want to have to spend every waking minute on fantasy basketball. I love talking about and studying fantasy basketball, but it's not my entire existence. Happy belated Father's Day, everyone, as I think about things that are also my existence. My weekend was amazing. My kid had his first ever all-star baseball tournament, and we were out in Moore Park for like 13 hours over 2 days or something stupid like that, and it was great. But that's all to say, again, like, we all have things going on in our lives. We don't have 30, 40, 50 hours to spend on fantasy basketball every week. I try to, so that you don't have to. But in terms of the rookie thing, a lot of the guys are going to be really, really bad. The vast majority. So then I just turned it into a math game. It's not a game, I guess. But when you know that like 7 out of every 8 rookies you draft are going to underperform their ADP, that's not to say that there isn't a reason to learn about these guys, but you could always just ignore all 8 of them on any given year, and odds are you'll be better off for it. But that wasn't fair, because there's a way to get value out of this rookie discussion by not complicating it, but desimplifying by one very small adjustment. And that small adjustment was basically to look for guys who are, I want to say like traditional big men, but have kind of a big man-y type of appeal and don't hurt you in any one particular category. That's not to say that the only rookies that succeed are going to be big men rookies, but they have a lot of big men-like tendencies, meaning excel in a defensive stat, no holes in field goal or free throw percent, and can do usually one other thing really, really well. For a traditional big man, that tends to be this combination of rebounds and blocks and field goal percent, not a punt free throw guy. But you could get sort of big man adjacent. An example would be Jalen Williams last year, who's not a big man, but was very good in field goal percent and didn't hurt you in free throw percent, was tremendous in steals, as you know, it's not blocks, but it counted. I think Jalen Williams finished, where the hell was Jalen Williams at the end of last year? He finished at number 74, didn't really get to play all that much at the beginning of the year, and then was a top 50 guy down the stretch. If you only looked at the second half of last year, which we're only doing just for analysis purposes, he was not a big man, but had the field goal percent of a big man with the free throw percent of a guard, and 1.8 steals, 0.4 blocks, so 2.2 defensive stats. So maybe we should just say like 2+ defensive stats is kind of the thing. So if you can be a positive in percentages and over 2 defensive stats, and you're a rookie, first of all, you're very unique, but you've got a shot because you're kind of like big man adjacent. No, Jalen Williams is not a rebounding phenom or anything like that, but he was so much better at free throw percent that he covered up the sort of, oh, you're a big man who's not terrible at it. But I didn't want to go down that path right now. That's like more the exception than the rule. The guys in that draft class that folks came on this podcast to talk about, I'm going back one previous year, were Jalen Duren and Mark Williams. Mostly Mark Williams. I'm remembering we did a show with William Harris. We did a show with David Williams. This was like almost exactly 2 years ago to the day. And both those guys were like, keep an eye on Mark Williams. Figure out where he ends up. And if he ends up in a good landing spot, he could have some value. Lo and behold, he ended that year as the number 113 per game guy in only 21 minutes a game because he averaged 10 points, 7.5 boards, 1.8 combined defensive stats, 66% from the field, and a not good, but not backbreaking 69% at the free throw line. You're usually looking for 70 plus, but hair splitting 101, 69%, pretty damn close. And it was around that time that I kind of got to thinking, can we still vastly oversimplify our stance on rookies while at the same time making sure we don't miss out on some of the ones that do work? The answer to that is a soft yes. I don't want to say resounding yes, but it's a soft yes. Because if you look at that draft, talking about 2022 now, we haven't even gotten to this most recent one yet. The guys that got drafted early in real life and in fantasy were Paolo Banchero, who's a 9-category train wreck, Jabari Smith Jr., who was fine, but underperformed his ADP that year. This year, he was a little bit better. Keegan Murray ended up like around 100, and that's basically where he finished. So it was kind of 6 of one, half dozen kind of thing. You saw Benedict Mathurin got drafted in a few spots, not a ton, as did Jaden Ivey, but that was kind of it. You didn't really see any other guys from that 2022 draft get collected in fantasy. Fast forward to the end of the year, the guys that actually had fantasy value from that draft were kind of Keegan Murray, who, again, not really a hit or a miss, kind of a neutral on that one. Jalen Williams, who was taken right at the back end of the lottery at number 12, and generally not drafted in fantasy leagues. Jalen Duren, who was drafted at 13, not generally drafted in fantasy leagues. Mark Williams, who was mostly dropped if he was drafted because he was behind Mason Plumlee for 4 months. And Walker Kessler, who came on halfway through the year in Utah. Also, again, not drafted. I would argue that from that 2022 draft, there wasn't a single rookie drafted in any kind of significant 12-team formats. Like, the percentage was not high enough to say, oh, this guy was drafted a lot. That actually was fantasy useful that year, other than barely Keegan Murray, who was drafted like 100 and finished at 90 or something like that. Where was Keegan that year? You know what? We can look this up. Finished at 95. So he was like right on it. But this solidified this new stance that we were bringing into the focus, which was, hey, were any of these guys big men who had big man-like appeal and a path to minutes right out of the chute? None of them were. But what about the guys that actually ended up with value at the end of the year, second half of the season? 3 of them were big men: Duren, Williams, Kessler, and the 4th was percentages superhero Jalen Williams. You can go to the previous year if you want, which was a draft that people consider to be better, not spectacular. You had Cade Cunningham, who went first to the Pistons. This is 2021 now. Underperformed his ADP. Rockets had Jalen Green. Underperformed his ADP. Evan Mobley went 3rd to the Cavs. He was a small win. I think he was drafted like 80 some odd. I'm trying to remember. I mean, it's a long time ago now, but I'm pretty sure that this is accurate in fantasy leagues, and then finished at like 65 to 80 range. Scotty Barnes was a slight fantasy win, but nothing spectacular. And then you basically had kind of nothing. Like, you look across the rest of the board, there were some guys in there that were kind of interesting, but none of them really put that dent into stuff. Jalen Suggs was hurt. Josh Giddey is bad at a lot of things. Franz Wagner got kind of close, sort of like nuzzled up against it a little bit. There's some guys that got good. You know, Alperen Şengün was drafted in 2021, but he didn't do anything that year. Neither did Jalen Johnson in Atlanta. That's much later. So who the hell's left? That was it. It's, by the way, not at all a coincidence that the one guy on that list that ended up outperforming expectations, that was also drafted some, well, I don't say high, but like generally drafted in leagues, was a freaking big man again. And it was Evan Mobley that year. And even that was not a big win. He finished at 81. I'm looking it up right now in 9-cat, but 15 points, 8 boards, 51% from the field, 66, not good at the foul line, 2.5 combined defensive stats. This is the formula. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. So now you get to this most recent season, which again, I get it. I'm burying the lead a little bit. Don't care. Wemby. Chet Holmgren. Not drafted in that same draft, but got to see playing time in that same draft. Brandon Miller. Kind of an interesting little test case. The Thompsons would be the other ones. Who else was fantasy relevant at any point this year? Derek Lively, the second for the Mavs, fantasy relevant. Jaime Jaquez for the Heat, although, again, Brandon Pajemski for the Warriors. Do we want to give any kind of nod to Scoot? No, I don't think so. Nah, I'm going to say no. All right, well, which of these guys had sustained fantasy value for the season? 2.5. The half being Brandon Miller, who finished at number 117 on the year, but was much better than that in the second half when Charlotte got rid of everybody. But still, over the course of the entire season, he underperformed. The guys, once again, that overperformed their ADP from this draft, and I have to argue guys that were actually heavily drafted. The only guys from this most recent 2023 NBA draft that were on fantasy teams pretty heavily at the end of fantasy draft season were Wemby, Brandon Miller, Scoot, Chet, and I would think Asar Thompson more than Amen. But maybe, I don't know. Can we say both? Not really. It's either Asar or neither. I didn't see many Amen Thompsons when the Rockets were healthy. He wasn't getting drafted all that much. So probably Wemby, Chet, Miller, and Scoot were the 4 that were on teams. Which of those 2 guys overperformed? The big men. Again. Amen Thompson had a wonderful second half of the season after Alperen Şengün went down. But again, that wasn't like getting the draft right. That was a key component of the team he was on got out of the way. He was a burger board, triple burger mega winner, but it wasn't happening unless Şengün got hurt. Derek Lively was kind of there and then not there. He also was banged up for stretches this season, not heavily drafted. You know, these guys that weren't drafted, you could say, yeah, Amen Thompson's second half of the year was useful. Lively, when he was healthy, he was useful. These guys were not dudes you could just play all season long anyway. And Asar Thompson, who got off to a really fast start and then crashed back to earth as fast as he blew into the ionosphere, was definitely not a value all season long either. Scoot was terrible when he was on the floor. You know, rookie guy with the ball in his hands, rough. Brandon Miller was bleh for about 3.5, 4 months, and then he was okay the last month and a half. Guys that beat their ADP were the big men. Wemby, because he's the weirdest thing any of us has ever come across since we've watched basketball. And then Chet, because he's the prototype for our softened stance on rookies. If a rookie big man comes in with shot blocking ability and the ability to both make their field goal and free throw tries and is expected to actually see minutes, that dude has a chance to beat his ADP. And they don't have to score 35 points to do it. I mean, Chet Holmgren scored 16.5 points a game this year. The beauty of Chet was good in both percentages, wonderful in blocks, positive in rebounds, and just didn't hurt you. That's the magic here. If you're a big man who doesn't have the free throw percent hold, or a hole in your game, I should say, you can wiggle your way through. There's really no lesson to be learned from Wembanyama because we may never see this again. I mean, maybe we do. Maybe aliens, freaks, whatever you want to call them. Maybe these guys just start growing on trees. But I can't believe that that's about to happen. That like a giant wave of 7'4" agile and like Gumby and Pokey claymation style basketball players are going to emerge all of a sudden. You're just going to have a league of guys that can block 4.5 shots a game. I don't think that's coming. So I'm tempted to just say, let's not worry too much about the Wemby lesson learned. And I'd prefer to point out the lesson learned on Chet Holmgren. And to me, the lesson on Chet Holmgren is that we are, at the moment, I believe, pretty much on the right track. And we're going to always analyze this stuff. I'm always going to come back and try to tweak it, fix it, whatever we need to do to get this thing right and also keep it simple. So, 20 some odd minutes into the program, Dan's finally telling you why we're recycling a couple of talking points in this show. The why is that with the draft 9 days away, we're going to talk to, I'm hoping, somewhere between 3 and 5 folks who really do understand rookies coming into the draft. And I want them to tell us where we can look for rookies who have the proper profile to beat their ADP. Not rookies who are going to put up some numbers, because it's not in a vacuum. This is like when people say, oh, pick a winner on this basketball game, but then they don't talk about the spread. It's very easy to pick basketball winners if you're not talking about the spread. You pick the better team, you're going to shoot a pretty good percentage there. This is the same thing. I don't care if a rookie's going to put up numbers. What I need to know is the rookie going to put up better numbers than expectation? Is the rookie going to have 9 category significance? And usually the way to find that is to find the rookies that are better at the least trafficked categories. There's no empirical data to give us the answer to like which categories are the ones that people care the least about. But there's, I think, way more than enough anecdotal evidence to just say people pay the least attention to the percentages, turnovers, and defensive stats. And conversely, maybe we just say the opposite. People pay the most attention to the things that count faster. Points the most. Assists and rebounds, probably second tier there. 3-pointers, probably the third tier. It wasn't that long ago. I mean, 10 freaking years ago, 3-pointers was a thing that people were largely ignoring. Now, because everybody in the NBA is hitting 2.5 of them a game, it's not anymore. 3-pointers are a stat that everybody's targeting or accidentally targeting because they're all shooting for points. If you're going for points, you're going for threes, basically. Unless you got a team of DeMar DeRozans. Jimmy Butler and DeMar DeRozan. Congratulations. You have some points and no 3-pointers. Most people are not going that route. It's part of why what our discussion with Adam Stock I thought was so relevant, because he's like, look at what the people are hunting for these days, and look at the easiest way to just kind of flip it. Although I still think the most interesting thing that Adam Stock said on that episode, and you guys can go back and listen or watch it, it was from a Friday a couple weeks ago, was look at what type of players are clustered in the middle rounds and build your punt around that, because that's a way to almost guarantee you get guys that fit your build really well. Then you're not fighting for like the 1 or 2 guys that make sense in the first 30. There's like 6 or 7 guys in the next group. You're going to get a couple of them. There's just a lot. That was beautiful. That was a really nice simplification of punting, or how to build your punt strategy. Really enjoyed doing that show with Stock, the punt master. But anyway, back to the point at hand. Can we draft rookies? The answer is yes, we can. But we have to be judicious about it. Good point, by the way, to Matt, who's watching live, says Trace Jackson Davis was good at times too. Yeah, there was like a was like the last 3 weeks, basically. He got more to do, interestingly, when Steph was out, and then just kind of carved out this little role. But again, big man, and also big man not drafted. It fits right into what we've been talking about. These are the guys that have the pathway. There are other dudes that pop up from time to time. It's just going to happen. You can't get them all. But now what we've done, so we went from saying don't draft rookies, which was dumb because this year, and this is unusual, this year, like half of the rookies that were getting drafted were decent or better than that. Victor and Chet were both really, really good picks this year. If you just ignored rookies altogether, you missed a chance to get two of the better picks in fantasy sports. Yes, you dodged getting burned by Scoot or Brandon Miller for most of the year, or Asar Thompson for most of the year, or Amen Thompson for the first 3 months or whatever. But you missed out on two game changers. Now, again, if you stuck to that same mold the previous year, you didn't miss out on all that much. You missed out on basically Jalen Williams, but then there were a couple of big men. So our old philosophy, which was just don't worry about it. You save yourself the headache. 3/4 of the time you were going to miss anyway, so let's go invest our time in something that has a better hit rate. Okay, but here's what we've done now. By adding just one little bit, adding just one extra thing to consider when we're looking at a rookie class, we've now totally changed our hit rate. Because instead of just ignoring all of them, we're ignoring most of them. You can still basically ignore any rookie guard. Like, I can't honestly, I'm sure they're out there, and someone watching or listening, you guys can just keep scrolling back year over year over year to find the last time that a rookie guard who got drafted at a decent clip in fantasy basketball was good. Like, right out of the chute. Tyrese Halliburton with the Kings was pretty good, I think, in 2020. Honest to goodness, I don't even remember what Halliburton did in 2020. I think he played a fair amount. Maybe not. Maybe he didn't do anything. What's the old brain say? 66th was the final mark on Halliburton that year. I don't remember where he got drafted, but I think he beat the mark. A low turnovers, high field goal percent point guard. Okay. Good luck finding those growing on trees in NBA drafts. Just keep going backwards. Let's play a game right here while we're talking on the podcast. All right, that was 2020. Let's go back to 2019. Who were the guys there that got drafted early? Zion. Nope. John Morant. Fun, but nope, because of all the holes. RJ Barrett. Yikes. DeAndre Hunter. Darius Garland. Nope. Jarrett Culver. Yikes. Yeah, nobody there that overperformed their ADP. I don't know if anybody in that rookie class overperformed their ADP. Was there even one? Let's keep scrolling. Scroll. Brandon Clark might have been the one who overperformed his ADP. He was taken 21st in that draft. Big man, by the way. Not that surprising. That might have been it. How about 2018? We can play this game. How far back are we going to go? Yeah, I know I'm beating a dead horse. Beating the you-know-what's off this dead horse. What's the 2018 NBA draft? Come on, let's get the names here. DeAndre Ayton. I don't actually remember how he did in his rookie season. I think he was decent. How did Luka do his first year? I don't even remember. I know Trae Young was a train wreck until the last month. Then he rolled top 40 for 1 month at the end of the year. How did Luka do his rookie year? This is 2018, 2019. Play a little game on the pod. Where was Luka his rookie year? Honest to goodness, I really don't remember. 100. He was number 100. So no, he did not perform his ADP. It just doesn't happen. So this is what we're able to do. Wipe out almost all of the wings, wipe out all the guards, and just look at rookie big men. Yeah, you would have missed Jalen Williams, but that's literally the only one, the only hit over like the last 6 years that wouldn't get covered by our current stance on rookie analysis. I still think this is a really low impact, low time investment way to do it. And we raise the hit rate, or honestly, we're lowering the miss rate more than raising the hit rate. Because now, instead of saying, okay, well, our miss rate was, if we ignored all rookies, the miss rate was 25%. Because let's say a quarter of them actually had fantasy value or actually beat their ADP. So 25% of misses. If we now say, okay, we're going to ignore all of them except big men who are like better than 65% of the foul line in college or something like that, now we've lowered our miss rate from 25% to I don't know what yet. But if you're looking again over the last like 6 years, it's Jalen Williams. And that's pretty much it. So, to answer the question in the thumbnail, the title of today's show, can we draft rookies? The answer is yes, but they have to fit a certain type. Let me answer one more thing, because everybody always wants to try to turn everything every analyst says into a fight somehow. I don't know why this keeps freaking happening. Am I saying on this show that analyzing everybody else is the wrong way? No. Emphatically no. If you have time to look at every single rookie in excruciating detail, you should do it. Because then your miss rate goes down to as close to zero as you can get it. Because then you might have been able to see something like a Jalen Williams for the Thunder coming, who, by the way, only got a chance because of an injury that year. And then they were like, oh, S word, this dude's good. Of course, you should do the analysis if you have time to do it. My job, as I see it, because I've sort of created my job that I've tried to make for all of you is to take this game that we love so much and make it as attainable, reachable, and simple as humanly possible. I'm the guy that's going to try to tell you to do 95% of the work and get 99.9% of the results. The dude doing 100% of the work might still beat you on this rookie stuff. Not every time, but, over a million coin flips kind of thing. Over a million years, they'll beat you on picking the right rookies. Of course, because they're going to spend 1,000 hours on it, and we're going to spend 5. They're going to beat us at some point. But I think that we can beat 99% of people by doing just a little bit of what the true degenerates are doing. That's what I want Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball to be about, which is what my previous show was about. It's what I want to be about as a fantasy analyst. How can I make this take as little of your time as possible and get the closest we can get to max effort results? Work smarter. Can we keep up with almost everybody? I think we can. I'm Dan Besbris for Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, at Dan Besbris on Twitter, at Old Man Squad on Twitter. I would kindly ask all of you, as I'm doing now in every show, and will for a long time here, because it's a brand new program, because we're only a month young, because we are a flip-flopping baby on our backs, please take a second, if you're watching on YouTube, to hit that like button, thumbs up it, thumb it, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, because you're also going to get fantasy baseball on there. At some point down the line, you're going to get fantasy football and fantasy hockey as well. Hopefully some other things as we continue to grow. The YouTube is largely going to be fantasy-based. And if you're listening on a traditional channel, first of all, you're my favorites among all the favorites, because those are the ones that pay us the best in ad revenue. Again, pulling back the curtain, I see no reason not to. Please do subscribe, iTunes, Spotify, whatever. Follow on Spotify. And if you have a moment to drop that 5-star review, I'd be most appreciative as well. Tomorrow, the plan is to get back into the ADP versus reality discussion, but I do want to really try to spend the next week plus on rookie stuff, on draft stuff. So we're going to be having some guests on the show over that span. Who they will be and in what order, you'll just have to tune back in to find out. Have a wonderful Monday, everybody. Thanks, as always, for watching or listening. I'm Dan Besbris for Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball and the Old Man Squad Sports Network. Hasta mañana.